Hi, everybody. Good morning. I hope you had a great week. My week was pretty good. At least I think it was. I try not to think backwards, only forwards, which has its pros and its cons. You know, we're almost coming up to Passover and, of course, Easter/Resurrection Sunday. So I wanted to think and start working on Easter and resurrection themes. So the whole Passover thing is about deliverance. It's about bondage. It's about slavery and let my people go. Breaking out of slavery. That's what it's all about. And then there's this sin theme that ties to that and ties to Easter also. So last week we looked at how bad sin really is. And I think a lot of you are like, I had no idea that sin is that pervasive and that ugly. And it really is. And we talked about it and we decided to move on to this week, the bondage of sin, because that ties to the whole slavery theme. And then next week, deliverance from sin, because that's the Passover story. And then triumph over sin, that's the Easter story. So it's a sin week. We're dealing with sin for the whole month, in fact. And I don't like it. I don't like talking about sin. I like the words in one of the songs. It says, you know, still the greatest treasure remains for those who choose you now, that kind of thing. One day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. And the song decided to bypass and those who don't are going to hell part. And just said, still the greatest treasures for those who choose you now. It just went with the positives. And as much as I like positives, there's a lot of negatives in life too. And sometimes we have to look at them square in the face. So this week, we're talking about the bondage of sin, led me to do some research on slavery. We were freed from slavery thousands of years ago in Egypt. And then just a couple hundred years ago, this guy named William Wilberforce, that song, Amazing Grace, is his buddy's life story. William Wilberforce was a man who lived in England a couple hundred years ago, and he got saved. He became a Christian, an on-fire man of God. So he decided to leave politics and become a pastor. And a bunch of people got around him, his friends, and said, no, you're making a mistake. Why do you think you can only serve God as a pastor? Can't you serve God as a statesman? Even better. And he thought about it, and he decided he would remain a statesman. And he took on the challenge of fighting international slavery. Britain ran the world back then. So if Britain would stop slavery, pretty much international slavery would be done. He made it his life's ambition to end slavery. He died sick and young, but he put an end to slavery. He did an amazing thing. And there's a movie out called Amazing Grace. It's his life story. It's worth watching. It's a great, uplifting, historically accurate movie. It wasn't long after he ended slavery that a bunch of Christians in the United States did the same thing here. But over the last couple hundred years, in third world countries, slavery has started picking up again. So I wanted to take a look and see how bad slavery really is today, and I was stunned when I found the statistics. I was shocked. I've heard of slavery. Every once in a while, 60 Minutes will do a little expose on it or something. You think, oh yeah, this is a problem, we should put an end to it. It's a big problem. The estimated number of slaves in the world right now today, 27 million. Now to me, that's just a number. I had to do some math so I could appreciate what 27 million was. So here's what I did. I said, how do I relate 27 million to real numbers? I know. I'll go to the United States government website and see how many people live in Phoenix and Tucson and see what that number is up against the slavery number. Here's what I ended up doing. To understand 27 million people, that takes the entire population of Los Angeles County, not just LA, but LA County, plus every living being, infant on up, in Phoenix, and Tucson, and New York City, and Chicago, and Miami. The entire state of Alaska, Detroit, and there's still 3 million unaccounted for. That's how big 27 million is. Today, slaves. I was blown away. They say about 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders every year. That's almost 1 million people a year. It's just stunning. Why doesn't somebody do something? By the way, of those 800,000, about half of them are children. So that means in these bad countries, they go grab these kids and turn them into slaves. It's horrible. It's evil. 126 million children work in the worst forms of child labor. That's 1 out of every 12 children who are between the ages of 15 and 17 in the entire world. 1 out of every 12 is abused in some sort of child labor. I don't mean they're selling newspapers to make a few bucks to buy a bicycle. I'm talking about kids who are forced to work in dirty factories, and it's horrible. There's about 300,000 children who are forced to be soldiers, many of them under the age of 10. What are these people thinking? Here, kid, you're 8 years old. Happy birthday. Take a rifle. We're going to war. That is just, it's evil. See, slavery is bad. Slaves are treated worse than animals. You take people made in God's image and you do that to them? It's horrible. It's an evil, ugly, barbaric practice. We talk about Passover. God freed the slaves. Yay! Let's eat. I wanted to help you understand how nasty, evil, and ugly slavery is. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to humantrafficking.com, do some more reading. So now that you understand what slavery is, ancient Israel, they were slaves. They were enslaved. Joseph saved the Egyptian empire from starvation. He brought his entire family there. They multiplied. Pretty soon he had so many descendants that the Egyptians said, whoa, what if they decide to turn against us someday? It would like if we decided to say, you know what? What if all the Mexicans in Tucson decided to turn against us someday? There's just as many of them as there are us. We'd be in big trouble. So let's turn them all into slaves. We would never do such a thing. But that's what they did. They took them and they turned them into slaves. And they were enslaved in Egypt for some 400 years. Exodus 3. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. When I went through my notes, I underlined 3 words in that verse. Misery, crying, suffering. That's the life of a slave. One of my favorite musicals, animated musicals of all time, there's a number that is a musical score that deals with slavery. So I'm going to ask Andrew to go turn off the lights, and we're going to take a look at it, and it'll help us understand what a slave's life is really like.